DraftKings Chief. We are in the building. It is Showdown, the pre-lock show. Will Priester, a.k.a. Chief Justice 06, TJ Zwarych, a.k.a. TJ_Zwarych 5. We are here to talk about a Sunday night football slate that hopefully will be incredibly fun, incredibly exciting. And, I told TJ about, what could impact me during this game. I'm not going to tell you guys. Let's hope that things swing our way, TJ, and it's going to be an incredible evening. I'm sure he's not watching this show, but we still want to shout him out. Shout out to our guy, Eric Bine, for bringing in 100, had a little 100K. That's probably going to hit the bank here real soon. Kudos to you, my friend. Heck of a lineup. And a lot of the things he talked about, of course, on his show this afternoon. I thought I was going to be really close to a takedown in the Millie on FanDuel, but the Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb pairing did not quite do what they needed to do. How about the Saints? But you don't want to hear about the Saints. You want to hear about the Houston Texans.
The Saints are the only good part about my day, my friend. The Saints are the only good part about my day so far. I can't emphasize how much the Rams let me down. Like, after the early set of games, I thought I was going to take down all the money. I was overweight on Dallas, New Orleans, underweight basically everywhere else. Didn't quite realize how big of a game Neighbors had, and I didn't have enough Neighbors. And, Godwin teams were just on the wrong teams, and Kupp gets hurt in the second quarter. The Rams just get absolutely blown out. I've never seen a team look so mismatched in a game before as to this one on both sides of the ball. It was
this
crazy.
Is why I thought the Cardinals were going to beat the Bills the week before. I know I kept telling everybody, I think the Cardinals are way better than people thought they were. And once again, I know the Rams were. I'm with you. The Rams were overmatched. But hey, it is what it is. Speaking of that,
in this game script at the start of the game, and I'm going, we're gonna win all the money. Stafford's gonna be throwing the ball the whole second half. And I was feeling good about it, and then no Kupp, and then the score just kept going and going and going.
Yeah, for sure. It got out of hand pretty quickly. And pour one out for Cooper Kupp, man. Another major injury here, TJ. So now I'm starting to get concerned because this is something that's happened to Kupp more than once now, where he's, been injured and had to leave and probably going to be out a little bit. We already know Puka Nacua is out. Speaking of injuries, we do have a major one for this game, and that is Keenan Allen will not be suiting up for the Chicago Bears. So that is important because that leaves Caleb Williams down one of his big acquisitions. Obviously, the other was Rome Odunze in the draft, but his big slot receiver, and he was the guy that picked up a lot of the targets last week, TJ. So we'll have to, I guess we'll determine that DJ Moore is probably going to be picking up a fair amount of market share today, along with Rome Odunze. If I had to guess, being that those are the number one and number two receivers, perhaps Cole Kmet will filter in and pick up a few as well. So let's get started here, TJ. I know we always want to start with the captain, and I like starting with the captain, talking DraftKings specifically first. We will talk FanDuel, so if you have FanDuel questions or anything like that, don't worry. We will get to it. We're not overlooking FanDuel, but we do want to talk DraftKings because of the salary penalty, TJ. I do think there's a little bit more strategy involved to try to help yourself not chop those up. And how do you want to get better and not chop those up? You got to get the RG Premium, folks. NFL Premium is on sale. Get your first month of NFL Premium for $15 off. You can also get yourself a 6-month combo subscription at an exclusive price of $469.99. That's a savings of $250 instead of buying 6 individual months of combo premium. If you're not a fan of commitment, you can get an RG combo premium for $120. Those that want to get a test run before buying can dip their toes in the water with our 3-day pass at $19.99. Check the links in the description below. Now, here's another thing that we've got going on, folks, and this is a good one here. It's our favorites pod contest. If you're looking for a plus EV contest this NFL season, our friends over at the Action Network have one for you. Their podcast called The Favorites is bringing back their free NFL Pick'em contest this season. Totally free to sign up at favorites.actionnetwork.com. Once again, that's favorites.actionnetwork.com. Just 5 picks against the spread every week. Cash prizes for the top 10 finishers, $40,000 to first place with a $100,000 prize pool. Thousands, and I do mean thousands, folks, up for grabs each week. Again, it's totally free to play, and the contest just went live. I believe that was last week. Just go to favorites.actionnetwork.com to sign up and compete for the $100,000 prize pool. We got the particulars out of the way. TJ, Captain DraftKings. Oh, Captain, my Captain. What are we doing?
I'm playing 3 lineups tonight, and I got two lineups with the same captain and then one with a different one. I don't love how much DJ Moore's ownership projection at the captain position has gone up in the last couple hours. He has really been steamed up since the Keenan Allen news, which is surprising because we expected Allen to be out all day. So, but I have 1 DJ Moore and I have 2 Joe Mixon. I'm going to be very heavy on Joe Mixon today. I think the Chicago pass defense is quite a bit better than their run defense, which may not matter against a team like Houston, where CJ Stroud could just light it up with those receivers anyways. But we saw Joe Mixon get 30 carries last week. I think this is a guy that's going to be getting a lot of touches throughout this season. So Joe Mixon is going to be my favorite captain today. DJ Moore is going to be my second favorite captain, save a little bit of a salary there. I think the only somewhat off the wall one I'd want to take a shot on would be Tank Dell or Stephon Diggs. Outside of that, I'm probably just keeping up with DJ Moore, Joe Mixon, and then Stroud's fine, but I think he's going over-owned.
Yeah, so let me ask you this in relation to Stroud, because he is, in terms of the captain position, he is the highest owned captain. And I think people are thinking along the lines of how this offense is set up, where he tends to spread it around some, and perhaps he ends up with 3 passing touchdowns, and nobody else really breaks the slate, but he gets close enough to where he's optimal. And I know you said, you're leaning Mixon or more, and I get that. I totally think that's fine. I'm just asking this on behalf of the viewers and listeners. How are you treating Stroud, being that he could pepper everybody and be the highest score between everybody in their offense? What are your thoughts there, just in terms of how they play football?
I'm just kind of mixing and matching. I think Dell for the price is going to be my favorite today, but I want to get as much Collins and Dell and Diggs as I can. I'm actually prioritizing each of them individually more than CJ Stroud, I think. I do like the kickers in this spot too, which we're going to get to. And so I'm going to be underweight on CJ Stroud. I only have him in one of my 3 teams, but I do like all the receivers individually.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. For me, I'm fine with Mixon at captain. I've got a mix of Mixon, Collins, Stroud, Diggs, Moore. That's where I am. Just because I feel like those guys can get the volume. I do think Rome Odunze is sneaky, but I'm going to kind of fade Rome. Rome had a little nick earlier last week too, TJ, where he was injured, and I don't want to run the risk with a rookie wide receiver in this type of spot. He could very well nuke the slate, but I'm just going to pass here. Let's hop over to the flex position, TJ, and let's start from let's call it the bottom up today. So a lot of times we start with receiver, we start with quarterback, we start with running back. Let's start with kickers today. How are you feeling about the kickers in this offense? Typically, the kickers are a little bit cheap, and we've seen some kickers put up monster scores, i.e. last week on our show when we saw the San Francisco kicker. I mean, he just went nuts, Mr. Moody. I'm not saying either one of these guys are going nuts, but Kaimi Fairbairn is a guy that they let kick. He does have a little bit of lag, and I think at home he should be in position to pick up a few fantasy points here, TJ, especially if they want to just keep the score moving along. How do you feel about Fairbairn and Santos in this spot in the dome, weatherproofed?
This is really a slate that it makes me wish I was playing more lineups, because there are a lot of players under 5K that I really, really like. In my 3 lineups, I'm going to be prioritizing Fairbairn above basically the rest. I do really like Santos as well. Flip a coin as to which one's better, really. But honestly, kind of as it stands right now, I have three Fairbairn and only one Santos in my 3 lineups, which makes me kind of think maybe I should be changing that to one of the ones that only has Fairbairn into Santos instead to even it up a little bit. But anyways, I'm going to be highly prioritizing the kickers. They're in a ton of my 3 lineups. They're a priority for me. Gerald Everett is going to be my next favorite of the cheapies. I do really think that I like DJ more because of the Keenan Allen thing. But I think Gerald Everett is sneakily going to be a guy that slots in as the slot receiver here in a lot of spots instead of Keenan Allen. I think Gerald Everett is going to be getting those touches. And so I'm a really big fan of him in this spot at $2,400. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. Then from there, I think you can look at some other like potential cheap Chicago receivers like a Tyler Scott, somebody like that, because without Keenan Allen, there could be a couple more of these touches to go around. And so at only $600 projecting for 3 points, that's actually pretty good. I saw a question already about Cam Akers or even maybe Dar Ogunbowale. Can you take shots on the super cheap running backs for Houston? I think if you were playing a ton of lineups, sure, why not? But for me, I'm just going to be going heavy on Mixon.
Okay, that sounds good, and I totally get it. Since you're saying we're going heavily Mixon, you mentioned some of kind of your cheap pieces that you like there also with Gerald Everett. How do you feel about DeAndre Carter? I'm not saying, he's going to light the world on fire per se, TJ, but, this is a guy that should get a little bit of extra work. He's 2K. What are your thoughts there? Clearly, I think he'll be returning punts and kicks as well. But how are you feeling about DeAndre Carter just on the offensive end? Because I think he's the one guy that maybe, the people may look and say, oh, well, DeAndre Carter's going to be the third guy now. So how do you feel about Carter? I know you like Everett more, but do you also feel like Carter is comparable?
Yeah, I do think Carter is comparable. And if I were playing more lineups, I would probably get some Carter exposure. The one thing is I kind of feel like him and Tyler Scott are essentially the same play, almost the exact same play, but one of them is 600 and one of them is 200. So I think Scott will be the sneakier option of the two because whether you may not need the 600 and so you could just leave salary on the table, or even utilizing him, you could pay up for somebody else. So I think he's more comparable to Scott to me than Everett. I like Everett more, but Carter absolutely in play.
Okay, sounds good. Let's move to running back here. You've talked about the fact that you really like Joe Mixon. I'm with you. I definitely like Joe Mixon as well. What's interesting here is Joe Mixon is the highest priced flex on this slate here. How crazy is that, right? He's 10-2 and everybody else is under him. I know your affection for Mixon. How do you feel about a guy like DeAndre Swift at 7K who could be more involved today with the lack of one weapon at wide receiver? I mean, this is a guy that, we feel like should be able to make an impact here, TJ. He had 10 rushing attempts for 30 yards. Didn't really have a whole lot of targets last week. He had 1 target. But clearly, obviously, we know things can change a little week to week. How do you feel about Swift at 7K, getting a really, really hefty discount from some of the other big names?
I love the price tag for him, and I think my, GPP brain tells me I should want to get overweight towards him because, look, we've just seen the Ravens just lost to what's their names? The Ravens just lost to
the Raiders.
The Raiders. Last week, the Bengals lose to the Patriots. This week, they come back and beat the Chiefs. So, anything can happen. But I do have a tough time seeing a positive game script for DeAndre Swift. I really think Houston's going to be ahead and potentially running away with this one. So that makes me want to not like Swift, but I do think he's going to be under-owned, and I do like that price tag.
Look, and let me just say, just generally speaking, it was for sure a weird week too. So it was a weird week, man. So we'll see how things shake out tonight. Hopefully they shake out in our favor, TJ. That would be fantastic. Let's hop over to receiver. We've talked about running back. We've talked about kicker. We've talked about captain. This is all DraftKings right now. Once again, we will discuss FanDuel separately. Let's hop over to wide receiver, TJ, because you mentioned that you do like DJ Moore. He's $9K. He's only more expensive in terms of the main receivers than Tank Dell at $7,400. So DJ Moore, $9K. Diggs, $9,400. DJ Moore has a better projection than Diggs, obviously, because he's going to pick up a lot more volume now. How are you feeling about Collins versus Stroud versus Diggs versus those guys? Because Tank Dell, I'm going to consider Tank Dell in a different category because he's so much cheaper. These guys are a little bit closer together. Collins, Collins, Diggs, Moore. How are you feeling about that particular group?
Moore is going to be my number one priority. Weirdly enough, that $400, that $1,000, that does a lot on this slate. So DJ and Moore is going to be my highest priority. Diggs number 2, Collins number 3. I have nothing against Collins, but there's just so many builds that I really like that I just can't get to him. And so I do like Stephon Diggs ahead of Collins, and then DJ Moore ahead of both of them.
Okay. Diggs ahead of Collins, DJ Moore ahead of both. That's your read today with that grouping, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And
All
yeah,
right.
Sorry, I misspoke when I was ranting about how the craziness of the games. Bengals come back and almost beat the Chiefs. They never actually won the game.
Gotcha. Yes. All right, here we go. Let's talk about Tank Dell and let's talk about Rome. So Rome has obviously probably a much better projection than he maybe would have had because Keaton is out as well. He's $1,000 cheaper than Tank Dell, but clearly we feel like the Houston offense as a whole is much better, right? We feel like they're a more established offense. Obviously, we saw Stroud last season. They picked up another weapon in Diggs. They picked up another weapon in Joe Mixon, and they kind of hit the ground running last week. Tight game, but they won the game. How are you feeling about Dell versus Rome? Because I think either one of these guys could be huge. Now, like I said, I know Rome was nicked up a little bit last week, but his production should see a slight uptick with Allen out. How are you feeling about the difference between those two, and how do you view them from a fantasy perspective?
Yeah, a perfect example with Adunze is like obviously was extra hampered because he missed a lot of last game with some injury, and then he was limited throughout practice this week. So it's not quite a 1-for-1 comparison. But Marvin Harrison Jr., terrible in week 1, lights out in week 2. Malik Neighbor is fine in week 1, lights out in week 2. And so absolutely could happen to Rome Odunze here as well. He's too cheap. He should probably be more expensive. He's, I think, the player that I feel least comfortable the fact that I'm fading in my 3-entry build. I wish I had a little Rome Odunze, but I just don't. He's the player I'm probably most afraid of not having.
Okay. I mean, I totally get it. I mean, look, we saw him at Washington. Obviously a big body, a guy that can put his hands on the ball. And so I guess we'll have to see how that materializes tonight against what should be, hopefully, TJ, we're hoping for an exciting game here. And hopefully Joe Mixon gets all the touches that he can handle, especially rushing attempts. Hint, hint, hint. All right, let's move over to tight end. You've talked about Gerald Everett, but who else do you like here? Obviously, we've got Komet. That could be, a factor here, with them being down a weapon. We've got Schultz, who, obviously has been, the main receiver in Houston in his second season, but there's another mouth to feed there with Diggs in the camp as well. How are you feeling about Schultz versus Komet in terms of the two main tight ends?
I actually don't like Komet at all, not just tonight, but this year in general. I think Everett is the tight end that you want in Chicago, long-term and tonight. So I'm going to not just underweight on Komet, but I'm comfortable with that fade. Schultz is the one I'm a little more worried about. 5,600, I think, is a nice price tag for him. I just don't find myself in that range of prices all that often. And so I do like Schultz. I think he's going under-owned. I'm just not getting there myself either.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. We're going to put a pin in that. No. One last thing. Are you playing any defenses? I'm not personally playing any defenses tonight. I tend to X out the defenses unless it's like two really bad quarterbacks, both playing with backups. Like, you know what I mean? So are you playing any defenses tonight?
I do have Texans in a Texans defense in a Houston onslaught team. Joe Mixon's the captain. It's got their defense. It's got their kicker, a couple of their receivers. So I am going with one defense, and it's just a full-on Houston onslaught.
Okay, sounds good. What we're going to do, we're going to hop over to FanDuel, and then we will come back and we'll start answering some questions. So, TJ, obviously on FanDuel, we get a little bit of a different flavor here with their showdown because there's no salary penalty. And we've got CJ Stroud up top as the highest price play at $16K. Mixon, $14,500. Collins, $13,500. Caleb Williams, $13K. Diggs, $12,500. DJ Moore, $12K. But the difference is, TJ, if you've got the person that scores the most points, that's who you want in the MVP, right? Like, that's who you want. So raw points here are going to matter. Who are you slotting in that MVP spot on FanDuel?
If I were doing a cash game, I would do CJ Stroud, but outside of that, I would probably just try and get anybody else in tournaments. Joe Mixon would be my favorite. DJ Moore's fine, but I don't think I need him as much on FanDuel where you don't have that salary multiplier. I wouldn't mind taking shots on Collins, Diggs, Dell, especially Dell because I think he's overpriced. Diggs and Collins are just so nicely priced on FanDuel that they'd be my main targets for single entry, smaller field stuff. But Dell in an MVP in a large field one, like a Millie Maker type setting, I think is really, really interesting because he's too expensive on FanDuel.
Understood. And I didn't see a whole lot of FanDuel questions, but I always want to go over there and make sure we capture, what the viewers and listeners want to talk about. Any sneaky plays on FanDuel, TJ, in terms of pricing that you think people wouldn't consider as much? So clearly we talked about DraftKings. Obviously we know that you like Gerald Everett. He's $8K on FanDuel. Is that still kind of your guy that you feel like maybe people aren't going to play as much? Because we've got DeAndre Carter on FanDuel at $6,500, and clearly he's the third receiver on the depth chart, and people may want to consider him. Are you still feeling as comfortable with Everett at $8K on FanDuel?
Yes, but I think if I have the $1,000, I would rather get to one of the kickers. I do like Everett as my favorite play below 9K, though. One of the reasons is I just don't really think you need that much salary savings. Like, Stroud's the only guy that's quite expensive on this slate. Collins and Diggs are so cheap compared to what they are on DraftKings, as is DJ Moore. So I don't think I'd really need to go to the super cheap stars and scrubsy build. I would just try and focus my lineups on the more Collins Diggs range. Plug those guys. If with all three of those players, I still have 1,100 remaining for my last two positions. It's like, even if I want to play Stroud, I can with one of the min price guys, or I can just stay in this mid tier, which I think is what I'm going to be doing.
Okay. All right.
I think you can fade both the quarterbacks.
On FanDuel, you're saying?
On both sides.
I'm not as comfortable fading Stroud on DraftKings for what it's worth. FanDuel, where he's $16K, I'm probably a little bit more expensive. On DraftKings, I'm borderline Stroud 100% in the flex for what it's worth. Like, close. You get what I'm saying? Like, I just think he's got too many opportunities for touchdown equity, I think. So that's just my read there. All right, we're coming back to DraftKings here. Guys, I'm going to start questions in the live feed chat. So that's where I'm starting questions in the live stream chat. I said live feed in the live stream chat. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Guess what? I'm in the live stream chat. I don't see any questions. No problem at all. I am now hopping over to the YouTube chat. I'm going to try to start from the top, and then we'll we'll move it down here. So this is coming from Jar Dog TV. He was saying he liked Schultz, but Diggs versus Dell on FanDuel. I know you talked about Dell being a little bit more expensive than what you like. Who do you like him on FanDuel versus over Diggs?
I like Dell if the rest of my lineup is chalky and I'm playing in a large field, but straight up 1-for-1 raw points, I like Diggs.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Are you playing any Sunday night football to Monday night football on FanDuel, like any of that crossover slate stuff?
I'm not personally, but I do see that question, and so I would say the priorities are tomorrow.
Okay. You've already answered this question. This is coming from Donnie Watson on DK and large field single entry. Can you get away with fading both quarterbacks, playing skill positions, and both kickers? TJ has already answered that question. TJ, if I'm not mistaken, you are perfectly fine with doing something like that, correct?
Yeah, I have one lineup with Caleb Williams. I have one lineup with CJ Stroud. The other one is fading both quarterbacks.
Okay, this is coming from DeMonte Taylor. How much salary left over tonight? DeMonte, I mean, in some of these showdowns, man, I don't mind getting even the $2,000 left over. That doesn't mean that you're going to not chop, but I definitely think it helps for what that's worth. Let's see. Oh, you've already answered that one. This is coming from David Neiman. DraftKings single entry. If you had to play a $200 player, who would you put a dart throw on? That's going to be Colin Johnson, Mercedes Lewis, Xavier Hutchinson, Cade Stover. Those are your four $200 players. Do any of those pique your interest?
Is Akers dressing? Because Akers would be mine at 200.
Maybe I got rid of him. Oh, I probably did. I probably got rid of him.
Because Damian Pierce isn't dressing. So I would go with Akers.
Sounds good. There you have it. Akers. You heard it here first. If that our spicy play, TJ. So that's something I didn't ask you. It feels like we're not getting incredibly spicy tonight. Gerald Everett might be a bit spicy, but is Cam Akers? No, Tyler Scott's probably spicy. That might be our spicy play, TJ. Is it Tyler Scott? Is Tyler Scott the spicy play of the night?
See, I don't feel great about that as a spicy play of the night just because I'm not playing him in my three lineups. Like, feels wrong to say that when I'm not doing it. But for me personally, the spice doesn't come with who I'm playing. It comes with who I'm not playing. And I only got CJ Stroud in the flex in one of my three lineups and none of him at captain.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. TJ, I don't see any more questions. I didn't see any in the live stream chat. Oh, never mind. Got it. Back in the live stream chat. This is coming from Alexander Don. I'm just jumping in. Appreciate you, Chief. Can you tell me about DK Cash? Sorry about the Panthers. I'm not sorry about the Panthers. They need to burn this thing down to the ground and start over. DK Cash for me, I'm probably running Nico Collins at captain and then building from there just because receivers typically get there. He's a little bit cheaper than Mixon. So for me and DK Cash, I'm probably running Nico Collins at captain and then Stroud in the flex, Mixon in the flex. And I'll probably have Rome on the other side. I'll probably have Rome on the other side. But anyway, that's what I would do in DK Cash. Carolina Guy 828, FanDuel GPP large field, favorite MVP, also favorite low-owned flex. Carolina, that's for you, TJ.
For what it's worth, I do want to say for like a cash perspective, just based on him being the highest projected guy, ownership and raw points projection, I feel like Stroud is the cash option for a captain. Get a little bit of a discount from Collins there too. But I blanked and I was thinking things over and I kind of forgot where we were. I went to another space. I apologize.
No, it's all right. FanDuel GPP large field, favorite MVP, also favorite low-owned flex.
Large field favorite MVP, somebody really low owned, I would go Tank Dell. Now, I don't think he has a really high likelihood of getting there, but I don't think it's impossible he could do the Marvin Harrison today and break off 2 really long touchdowns. Low owned flex, I'll go Gerald Everett.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And then you already answered that question. You said that you liked Stroud in the captain. So we've already got that one covered.
Just for cash, yeah. I'm fading him in
Yeah, for
tournaments,
cash,
but for
yeah.
cash, I'd like
Yeah,
that.
it was the same guy. He said what was TJ like, but you had already answered it after I answered it. You get what I'm saying? So
yeah. That's when I got. That's when I
I
got in my own zone, and I was like, "Oh wait, I answered the wrong question," and then I forgot where we were.
Yeah. All good, man. All good. No worries. Let's see. Here's another one. Diggs or more a priority. Diggs or more.
In a vacuum, more, but it really depends on the rest of my team.
Okay.
I saw he asked earlier. I don't know what the format would be, but Diggs and Mixon or Moore and Schultz. Like that's how Diggs and Mixon by so far.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. Dave Jones. This is a kind of a stretch here. Cam Akers or Tank Dell and captain on DK.
I mean, I would rather go Dell, but if you really want a chance at first prize that no one else will be doing, you'll probably be sub 1% ownership with Cam Akers. I wouldn't do it.
Yep. All right. How chalky is Mixon at MVP on FanDuel?
He's not that bad. Like he's projecting for the second highest owned MVP, but he's very comparable to the high end receivers like DJ Moore, and CJ Stroud is going to be like over double anybody else at that position. So he's the only one who's really chalky.
Yeah. Okay. Coming back to the live stream chat. Is Stroud too chalky in a DK20 max if you're getting a little different elsewhere as captain? I don't think so. Like if you're getting that different, then I think you're good. If you're really that much different.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. TJ, I don't see any more questions. Folks, we are going to put a little bit more time back into your evening as you prepare to come up to the 8:20 kickoff for the Texans and the Bears, two really young quarterbacks. I'm Chief. This is TJ. This has been the Showdown Pre-Lock Show. Folks, we will see you back here every Sunday at 7:40 p.m. Eastern Time. See you next week.